I'm the editor and curator of Law at the Margins. Law at the Margins is a social media platform where activists, academics, and lawyers are brought together to talk on issues of law and social justice. To subscribe and learn about future programs or the great articles on the website, please go to lawatthemargins.com. It's free to subscribe. And I want to begin, these Google Chats were sort of initiated by social media consultant Albert Garcia, who is always behind the scenes. And I want to always thank, as a labor advocate, those who are working behind the scenes and giving their labor. Today I'm really excited to have a wonderful guest who is a national renowned immigration activist. He's the co-founder of Dream Action Coalition. His name is Cesar Vargas, and you must have been reading his articles and learning about his landmark case in New York, where the highest court of the land in New York, the Court of Appeals, authorized him to practice law. We're going to talk about that. He's been extremely active around political issues, and also we are both alumni of the New American Leaders Project, which encourages immigrants to participate in civic matters. And so we're going to talk about the election that's coming up in 2016, and particularly the role of Latinos in the political process. Thank you, Cesar, for joining us today. We will be having a conversation just with Cesar because I think he brings a tremendous amount of experience and wisdom. Those of you who want to ask him a question, please use the Q&A feature on the left-hand side of the Google Chat. You can also tweet your questions. Use the hashtag #LawAtMargins. So welcome, Cesar. I want you to begin the chat a little bit about your case. Tell us about it. Why is it so important?
Well, thank you so much, Chaumtoli, for everything, for inviting me and having the opportunity to really have this discussion now, especially within 2016, especially with a lot of focus on a lot of the anti-immigrant sentiment. So I think it's a really great opportunity to have this discussion. And yeah, I think right now we are seeing the immigrant community, especially stuck in I guess in a position where kind of like purgatory. We have no immigration legislation in Congress. Congress has failed to do anything. But also we have states responding by introducing legislation like healthcare, like driver's license, and the other instance, like here in New York specifically, New York made history by the court ruling in favor of allowing undocumented immigrants to practice law. For me, that was a legal fight that I have been fighting for almost 4 years since I graduated law school in 2011. I graduated not knowing whether or not I would be admitted, and graduated not knowing whether I would even be a lawyer. But I know with myself and my lawyers at Latino Justice, we took on that fight. We took on that legal fight to demonstrate to the court, to demonstrate to New York that what matters in a lawyer is advocacy and passion for your client. And we won that victory. We won that. And on June 3rd, the Court Appellate Division, Second Department ruled that what matters is a commitment and a passion for a client, not immigration status. And it opened the door not just for dreamers with DACA, but also the ability for every undocumented immigrant to practice law. And I think that was a significant key because it opened the door not just for lawyers, but possibly for other professionals, doctors, engineers, plumbers, hairstylists, those who need a professional license or those who need a license to practice their profession. So for me, it meant significant because my mom, has always been my inspiration. And for her was the reason I graduated. For her was the reason I got this far. And it was a really bittersweet moment, and I'll tell you why it was bitter, but it was a bittersweet moment hearing the decision that I would finally be able to practice law, would finally be able to be sworn in, and my mom will be there right next to me. So for me, it was a significant decision because I did not want to just go under the radar, be admitted, and just do my own thing. I wanted to set precedent. I wanted to make sure that we undocumented immigrants, that our community, Latinos, should not have to hide, that we needed to speak up in a loud voice to say, this is who we are, we need to take this on.
Great. Yeah, and we're going to get to why you're, as I understand, still not yet admitted to the New York bar. But before we go on to that, it seems like your success of the case, again, really a shout out to the Latino Justice Center, Pearl Death, is built on prior cases. You know, as an immigration labor advocate myself, we fought for undocumented workers to get their labor rights. We fought sort of around immigration not being a barrier for practicing your job. And it seems like your case is sort of continues to expand that field. And as you said, to other professions, like other licensees. Can you talk about who else might be benefited from your decision? That it's just not just about lawyers practicing, that it's other professionals or other workers who are licensees who actually might benefit from this landmark decision. Who else might benefit?
Yeah, and right now, we have other undocumented immigrants who are graduating from professional schools, medical schools, and dentistry. And I think that's something that we're seeing how this decision is going to impact. But at least in New York and even California and Florida, we have those are 3 states that already allowed undocumented immigrants to practice law. So possibly, one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we argue to the court was not just because we had the decision to argue allow Cesar Vargas to practice law because he has DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Child Arrivals, the deportation relief program that the President announced in 2012. We could have very narrowly argued that, but we took the more bolder step to say no. We just need to say Cesar undocumented, and yes, he has DACA, but it's not the positive of how the court should argue. And ultimately, we wanted to be as expansive as possible to include all undocumented immigrants, regardless of your immigration status, to make sure that we are pushing a broad argument to allow others. And here in New York, that was a huge victory what we have. And as we have more dreamers or undocumented immigrants coming into I guess their graduation in the dentistry, at least for myself, I know I've been reached out to by dreamers who are in Loyola Medical School, who are in California Medical School, in dentistry, and I think they're relying on this legal victory to make sure that we are pushing. And of course, in New York, right? I think that's the significant. This victory was made possible by so many people. And not just myself, not just because I'm the face that for me. I thank so many people who made this fight possible. Chaumtoli, from your work during the labor movement, and all the immigrant community, the Latino community, our communities of color who are pushing for this victory. So I think we're seeing these victories being won not just by one person, but being won by a literally an army of advocates of community, and just our parents who have been our inspiration for that.
Right, and I want to echo what you've been saying much directly, which is organizing has led to this positive legal result. I mean, if it wasn't for the undocumented youth organizing, including yourself through the Dream Action Coalition around DACA, I don't know that we would have the political conditions now for your legal victory. And I think sometimes as lawyers, we sometimes forget our wins are really on the back of the community organizing. New York is a funny place. It's so progressive, and on one hand, your case is landmark. Cuomo just recently passed legislation in the restaurant industry around nail salon workers. Yet when we talk about undocumented students and tuition, that's consistently failed, as I understand, and you probably have more update. Can you give us a sense of this political contradiction? Like on one hand, you have your landmark victory on the cases and victories in other areas, yet on immigration front, at least broadly, not just in terms of this case, we keep coming across all these obstacles. Why? What's happening? Why do we have these funny results politically?
Yeah, well, first of all, all these victories that we've been getting, including the 15 an hour for fast food workers, was a victory. Definitely not because of Governor Cuomo. I think that's the first thing. It's always been the community. It's always been the people who have been pushing for this policy changes, social changes. So for me, I am definitely I definitely cannot say Thank you thank you to our politicians, because that's their job. Their job is to put forward the voices of our community. Their job is to get legislation done, get policy changes done. The community is really the people we have to thank. And Governor Cuomo has been very timid on his advocacy for the people who got him elected. I think that's something that the workers push for the 50 an hour. The workers sacrificed days on strike because they had to fight for their voices. So, and I think it's very powerful that the governor of New York has finally responded. But at the same time, we do have New York as I think you're right. We have New York, a state that whenever I'm traveling across the country, people say, well, New York is doing all this, New York. But then they get to see what things that had failed, right? Driver's license, the DREAM Act, and I think we have a governor who hasn't been committing himself to the changes he promised in his re-election. And this is where politicians and politics comes in. We have a governor who campaigned on the DREAM Act, who campaigned on his support, but when it came to actually fighting for it, he hasn't. He has instead been coordinating with the Republican conference to ensure that his policy directives, his priorities are moving forward. But the DREAM Act and other issues are not really his priority. And I think we are seeing that a governor who says one thing but doesn't commit when his actions when it matters. And we definitely need to make sure that we are speaking up and ultimately to really challenge him that what, just because you're the only candidate there doesn't mean that people are just going to be blind. We need to keep challenging. We need to keep reminding him that his election victory was made possible by us, and that his promise, just a promise, is not going to be enough. And we're going to be pushing for the DREAM Act, even though I wouldn't benefit from the DREAM Act. I do know the importance of having educational support for young students to be able to graduate, to be able to have the resources, the financial aid to make their dreams come true. Because ultimately, it's really about matters, especially in how we argue to Republicans. A college graduate earns over $3,500 more and pays more in taxes than someone who doesn't graduate. And the investment of the DREAM Act is barely 87 cents. So the question is for New Yorkers, do you want to invest 87 cents in 1 year and get $3,500 in 1 year? The math is easy. It's just the politics of Albany and the timidity of the governor who's not getting it done.
Right, that's a great segue to, I want to move on to sort of politics and the immigrant rights movement. Before I get to that, so why are you not currently admitted to practice law? As much as you can share, I know when there are legal cases pending, there's not a lot, sometimes there's some restrictions. But tell us about sort of why haven't you been able to get admission yet?
Well, yeah, like right now the case is over, so I'm going to disclose everything.
Okay.
And it was definitely, I think on the same day that we heard the decision, June 3rd, that New York had made this historic decision, I was in Des Moines, Iowa, defending myself against trespassing charges from an incident in January where myself, and other dreamers from around the country went to a conference, that Iowa Freedom Summit, where all Republican presidential candidates were there speaking about immigration, about their possible candidacy, and we went there to challenge these Republican candidates to where they stood on immigration, especially since many of them have joined the immigration lawsuit against DACA, against DAPA, and against the President's executive actions on immigrations that have protected my family, have protected myself, and could possibly protect my 7-year-old mother. So we went there to challenge them, and during the event, we went with we challenged Governor Perry from Texas as the leading plaintiff. I mean, the plaintiff suing the president on immigration, and I challenged Governor Christie from New Jersey, right across the Hudson River, to remind him where he stood on immigration. I challenged him. I questioned him when he was doing his speech. For me, I wasn't interrupting. I wasn't being violent. I wasn't disobeying any orders. I asked him a question, and all of a sudden, police came and they escorted me out, and they had told me that I was already free to go. I didn't do anything. Many people have done this for, many times in Iowa, and And eventually, the police officer got a call from Citizens United, one of the organizers. This is Citizens United, from the same people who money is speech. Apparently, speech isn't speech for them. So they demanded that I be arrested. And eventually, the police officer said, this is not a big deal. You shouldn't have got arrested. So they let me go on the same day, but I had to return to court to fight them because, for me, I had to fight this because I wasn't doing anything that wasn't, others have done, and people have been in court before. So, it's Iowa. I eventually was convicted for trespassing, and the judge obviously recognized that this wasn't something serious, so she gave me probation. So eventually, I would not have a criminal record. But in New York, we have a policy. The Character and Fitness, the New York Bar has a policy that you cannot move forward an application if that person is on probation. So instead of what my swearing-in ceremony could have been on June 10th, it could possibly be delayed for another year. So it was definitely tough. It was definitely tough to know that I was this close. But you know what? I had to speak up. I couldn't. This is part of me to fight for my family, to fight for my community, to fight for so many families that are being separated, and I couldn't just stay silent. And if it cost me my license for another year, then so be it. So be it. I think what matters that I learned is that you don't need a license. You need a license to practice law, but you don't need a license to fight for your family and your community.
Right, that's excellent. To be an advocate, you don't need to be a lawyer. And in fact, that's one of the things I always stress as a lawyer to non-lawyers. So it's interesting. Your response brought up a lot of information around Citizens United, the role of elections, the irony that here you are exercising your freedom of speech, and on a topic around immigration, which always comes up, almost like deja vu in the national election cycle. And you are being penalized for that. And then also the other piece is the way criminal records interfere with our rights. There should be no reason why there should be a policy on probation prohibiting you from practicing and being a lawyer. Quite honestly, it's an area of work that I've worked on around reentry. But I just want to flag that for those who are listening. That the way in which the probation is serving to delay your admission also needs to be questioned, but that's for another topic. I want to encourage folks to ask Cesar questions. This is a half-an-hour chat, so we're midway through the point. Please tweet your questions at #LawAtTheMargins. You can use the Q&A feature to ask him any questions. Now I want to delve deeper a little bit into the politics. You risked your license for a year, which you will get. We're all behind you, Cesar. It's just a matter of not if, but when. But you risked it all for your civic participation, for being active in the democratic process. You've written recently about running for president, but then said, oh, only if I'm eligible. So let's talk about sort of why that's so important to you. Why is it so important to be involved in this electoral space? A lot of activists think, let's not bother. The Democrats, Republicans, they haven't done anything for communities of color. Forget them. We're going to do our own thing. Why do you keep investing time, energy, and put your license on the line for this kind of civic political engagement?
Simply because we have power. Our communities have power. Undocumented immigrants have power, and really when my 70-year-old mother who crossed the border herself with 4 little children, anything could have happened to her. She could have been killed. She could have been raped. Her children could have been kidnapped. And she risked everything to give me a better life. And that is power. That is courage. And if she can do that to give me a better life, a chance at the American dream, that demonstrates the power of the community. Whether you have papers or not, whether you're rich or poor, or whether you're college educated or not, we have power. And when I announced my presidency, it was for me it was a way to highlight, one, the absurdity of a constitutional requirement to be born in the U.S. I gave examples that, being born in the U.S. doesn't equate to loyalty. We have had examples of American citizens, really, being, switching sides from Benedict Arnold in the American Revolution to an FBI agent, spying for the Soviet Union. So, that obviously is an absurdity that, we have when, it was constitutional, allowed to not to give women the right to vote, right? So, I wanted to kind of highlight the absurdity. But most important, I wanted to highlight that, look, here I am, undocumented, announcing my presidency, and even though I don't even have the vote, I do have a power to just get the attention of our elected officials. And most important, I wanted to demonstrate that to young people. Many people have reached out to me saying, hey, I didn't know I could run for office, or I didn't know that I could be a senator, a president, and these are U.S. citizens. And for me, it was so cool seeing young people say, you know what, I'm going to be able to run for president, for Congress, for governor, and I think that's for me one of my original intentions, to get young community of color, young people to take the chance of running for office, to not depend on just the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to make changes, but to depend on yourself, depend on your community to have that power. And I think for me, it was great seeing many young people saying, I'm going to run for office, I'm going to run for office, because that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be not just spectators at the political process, we need to be active players in the political process to make sure that we get the changes that we want.
So I think that's absolutely right in terms of being active and participating. But what have we gained? I mean, I think in my own sort of organizing and then legal career, I've seen the immigration topic come up and again, getting yay close to immigration reform. Trump now has brought up issues about a wall and national security. So immigration reform continually comes up in national elections and elections, yet we haven't really seen much changes. So what do you think? I mean, what are the prospects for immigration reform changes? What do we need to do to make some of that a reality?
Yeah, immigration legislation and comprehensive immigration reform absolutely is the ultimate solution. But we have gotten many victories. We have had already many policy changes at the state level and even at the federal level that we have secured because of the movement that we have built. Just a few years ago, the president said that I couldn't take executive action to protect families. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the power. But you know what? We challenged him on that. We challenged him on the law. We challenged him on the policies, and we challenged him on the politics. And in 2012, where everyone thought nothing was going to happen, we demonstrated not just political electoral muscle of the Latino vote, but we flexed our muscle of pushing out the White House to take executive action, to back it up with legal precedent that the president did. And on the state level, we have California who are introducing significant policy victory policies like driver's license. Right now, over 15 states have about in-state tuition, and these are states like Virginia, like Florida, California, and many other states. So driver's license have been gaining traction in places like Utah, North Carolina, and I think we are seeing many victories. We may not have immigration reform, but we are pushing to remind that we don't have an arbitrary deportation machine. We're scaling back on that, and most recently, amazing advocates have been pushing the administration to end family detention centers that are prisons pretty much, and we cannot have a mother or a child be in prison only for escaping violence. So we are winning so many. Of course, we have tough fights. We have the Trumps who are like fear mongering and exploiting tragedies just to scare people's valid and just pretty much pick people's fear of an outdated immigration system. So we're obviously not there on comprehensive immigration reform, but we are getting close, and we are making great strides towards that.
And so what do you see in terms of 2016 and the election and some of these issues? How can we raise up the comprehensive immigration reform, or maybe other issues that impact immigrant communities? I want to talk about that first, and then also just if you wanted to incorporate the issue about reaching out to the Latino community, keeping in mind immigrants and Latino are not the same, but at the same time, I want to, I know that you've done a tremendous amount of work in the Latino community broadly, and so I thought maybe you can share a little bit specific about the work in the Latino community and how the candidates are reaching out, if at all. Supposedly this is a community that is pivotal to the election.
You know, it's definitely, you know, the Latino electorate, but also overall, like, communities of color are going to be playing a vital role. You know, for us, you know, as soon as the 2016 kind of like fuss started creating, you know, over a few months ago, you know, we were reached out to by the Hillary campaign. We were reached out by the O'Malley campaign, and you know, right now, you know, we have Republican president candidate really willing to reach out and just kind of listen to the you know, dreamers and to the Latinos community when it comes to the election. You know, in Iowa, you know, I've spoken with Ted Cruz, I've spoken with Marco Rubio, I've spoken with Chris Christie. You know, so I think they are paying attention, and you're right. I think when we are talking about the immigrant community, we're not just talking about Latinos, but right now we are seeing a Latino electorate really shaking up the election. But also we need to make sure that we have the information out there for Latinos to know who's on our side with the right policies and who is not there, who is just using a YouTube video speaking Spanish that, you know, that those candidates think is going to be enough. So for me, my job, you know, even though I cannot vote, is to remind them who is on our side and they're paying attention. For me, you know, the reality is that Latinos and our families are going to listen to us directly. Then we're going to be more effective than a campaign mailer, a campaign ad. You know, for us, you know, we're going to tell them, we're going to inform them, because their vote is going to be our voices. But also, we also have a voice when it comes to remind them, you know, who is on our side and who isn't. And we're going to keep, you know, talking about this, you know, platforms from across the country. You know, for me, I'm going to be traveling, you know, from, you know, to Seattle, to, you know, a blue state, to Georgia, Virginia, Florida. You know, for us, we're going to be we're going to be discussing this, and for me, using my platform to make sure that, you know, the Republicans know not to attack our families, but also for Democrats not to take advantage of the Latino electorate just because Republicans are being on the side. And this week I'm going to be in El Punto, Univision, with Jorge Ramos to discuss, you know, make sure that, you know, Hillary should not just take our vote for granted. She should present a concrete platform, because the reality is, you know, we have, you know, a Hillary campaign, you know, accepting money from lobbyists who represent prison detention centers. You know, I think, you know, that's alarming that, you know, we have Hillary speaking very nice about immigrants, about immigration reform, but what actions matter, you know, substance matters. And for me, I'm going to continue to make sure that even if it makes me unpopular in the Democratic Party, even if it doesn't invite me, if I don't get invited to, you know, fancy parties at the White House, I'm going to make sure that what matters is the real policies that are going to protect our community.
That's great, and we're going to slowly wind down. Is it too early to give a report card, or in terms of how each of the candidates, Democrat or Republican, fare in terms of reaching out to the Latino electorate? Are there candidates you think that we should look closely at because their rhetoric matches their politics? Is that a fair question to ask you in terms of giving us a little bit of a rating on each of the candidates?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a little early. You know, for us, it's not to dismiss any candidate, you know, whether it's Republican, Democrat. For me, like, you know, I'm not. You know, I want each candidate to succeed, but I want them to succeed with the right policies. If Hillary, you know, puts forward the right policies, great. You know, if she champions actual commitment, great. But if not, then, you know, we cannot just be starstruck with the first woman president, right? We learned that lesson in 2008, you know, with President Obama, who promised all this, and yet, you know, we had almost a record 2 million deportations of families being separated, more than any president in history. So for us, you know, we're going to make sure that we are speaking to them. We are going to continue to have a conversation with them, you know, how they're going to, but also to look at the other, you know, Governor O'Malley has an exceptional record on immigration, from driver's license to the DREAM Act, to protect, you know, to standing up for the Central American refugee children, to you know, Senator Sanders, who has been who has been championing, economic policies within immigration. So, it's for us to, all of us, our community, to consider all the candidates. It's not just about the who has a better brand, but it's about who has a better policy that matters. And we're going to continue to work with the candidates, but at the same time, we're going to make sure that we're not just only approving of their plan. We're going to, if we don't agree with someone, we're going to go after them. We're going to go after their policies. We're going after the candidates, and we're going to challenge them on the ground and at the electoral level. And we're going to make sure that not to vote for A, B, C, and to vote for C. For us, we're going to be unrestrained and standing up for the people that we love, for the communities that have given us so much.
Great. So we're going to wrap up. I want to always leave viewers with information and then an action item. So if we wanted to kind of keep posted on the candidates and how they're doing around the election, what are some sources or places where people can go for information and that you can share? And then the others we're going to post on the Facebook page as well. So, but what are some places where people can get information in terms of election, the Latino electorate, and the immigration rights in terms of what you've been talking about?
Yeah, for me, I would say, definitely follow us. Follow Dream Action Coalition on Facebook, DRM Action on Twitter. For us, we're always, putting out real concrete substance on the candidates' positions. We just last week we went to Arizona at the Netroots Nation conference. We actually had President Buchanan, Governor O'Malley, come to us to talk about his immigration platform, to talk about where he stood. And he had an amazing platform that he would take executive action in his first year. So but also we're putting concrete challenge in his positions on police reform, Hillary Clinton's police reform, and all the other source would be America's Voice. They have been amazing in putting forward the positions that Republicans and Democrats. And for us, and ultimately, look at their campaign websites. A lot of these, many times when I ask people, have you visited their websites of Hillary Clinton or Governor O'Malley or Marco Rubio, people say, no, we just listen to what's going on everything. But they have a lot of information, especially when Republican candidates or even Democrats, they say something in English and something in Spanish that's very different. And I think we need to be very careful of how they're also putting forward their messaging and tailoring it, perhaps deceptively, to one audience versus another. So I think for us, it's making sure that we have that stuff.
Great. Oh, that's so fascinating. When you're bilingual, I speak Bengali, and it's true. There are different messages oftentimes to cater to a community. So the last item I want to ask you is kind of a call to action. What is one thing that maybe those who are listening can do to support your work? And we do have one question, which is actually a large question from Daryl Sugdeo, but maybe you can fold it in there. I know you're a brilliant lawyer-to-be, which is, can we affect changes via a memorandum of understanding that can be adopted by various federal agencies? I guess this is related to immigration reform, whether various federal agencies can adopt a memorandum to make some changes. So that was a question thank you, from Daryl Sugdeo. So if you can respond to that now, or I'll try to also respond to that offline at the Facebook event page. But let's end with what's one concrete task or action that folks can do to really move some of the work that you're doing forward. And if you can fold in Daryl's question, that would be excellent. If not, maybe I can link the two of you separately offline.
Yeah, no, I simply, I think we're all come from and can commit to different. So for me, one question, like, this is what people should do. I think for me, it's about, what you're willing to commit. I think if you can, issue a tweet, make a, tweet to Hillary Clinton, say, hey, why are you accepting money from private prisons, to actually going into an action, organizing, reaching out to me on Facebook and Twitter, Cesar, I want to organize a rally on this, can you help me? So I think it matters, like, what are people willing to do? And if you can do, if you can just tweet to organize a rally, let's go for it. It's about really committing that action, and it's about, I guess with the question, And I think we can have many memorandums, but what matters is enforcement of any policies when it comes, when we have seen examples where, we have gotten great memos from immigration, but the enforcement is not there. And I think it's connecting with us taking action to make sure that whatever memos are out there are actually enforced and implemented in a way that are intended to protect our families. And I think that really that's the call to action, to take action, and you commit to whatever you can commit. Tweet, Facebook, share an article, to donating, to actually getting out there, organizing, joining a campaign, or joining the 15 an hour campaign, joining the Not One More campaign to stop deportation. So it's not for me to tell you what to do. For me to tell you that you can take action and you have the power.
Great. Excellent. I mean, I wouldn't have expected any other response from you, Cesar. It was a phenomenal speaking to you. It's been just amazing to watch you and Dream Action Coalition and advocates really bring up some of the issues that you're doing. And I think that people have to remember that they can and they do have the power to take action. And I think you said earlier that if you, someone who is undocumented, even if you're a 70-year-old mother, I know she was out there. I've seen tons of pictures of her protesting. I think that if folks are out there and we demand change, then the laws are going to respond to that. And I think thank you for that reminder. I hope you'll come back again. And thanks to everyone who is listening in on this chat. Stay tuned for future chats and articles. And I have a bunch of articles by Cesar on the Facebook page. Please read them, follow him, and join in on the Dream Action Coalition. So thank you, Cesar, so much, and take care.
Thank you so much for having me again.
And again, a shout out to Albert Garcia, who's behind the scenes as a social media consultant on these Google chats. Take care.
Thank you.